Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Thank you for staying with us. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Starting with Nigerians have been contending with extreme heat for the past few weeks. The situation has been compounded by the poor supply of electricity across the nation. Arise senior correspondent Oba Adeoye in this report tells us more about the prevailing heat waves, which eased slightly, with some communities recording their first rainfall of the season.
Data released by the World Health Organization showed that more than 166,000 people died due to heat waves between 1998 and 2017. This is apart from those who died during the 2003 heat wave across Europe. WHO says there were more than 70,000. Since early February of 2024, Nigerians have been experiencing excessive heat of the atmosphere. This condition, called heat wave, is often characterized by high temperatures, high humidity levels, and little or no rainfall. The Global Health Management Body categorizes heat waves as one of the most dangerous natural hazards which rarely receive adequate attention because death tolls and destruction caused by the wave are not always immediately obvious. Timothy Ojo is a medical expert trained at the University of Ibadan. He is the managing director and the chief executive of Timotech Hospital in Lagos. Ojo says heat waves has been experienced in the country should not be taken lightly because it has direct bearing on human health.
The impact of this is it can cause what we call dehydration. That is a condition where there's more body water loss of fluid or water from the body system. So, and this has some negative effects on the body system, especially some of the organs, the kidney, the liver, the heart. So much water is being lost now at the moment. Then you should observe that, especially in our children, most of them cannot even sleep well now because of the heat that is too high for them. You see most of them with a lot of skin rash. Most of them cannot sleep, a lot of convulsions because of the present condition.
The weather conditions these past few weeks have not only been hot across major Nigerian cities due to the effect of climate change. The poor supply of electricity has worsened the situation.
They can't sleep in the room. The heat is too much. Government should please call the NEPA to court, talk to them. They should please consider the people. There's no light. We pay for light, we don't have the light. So what are we paying for? And we keep paying, and there's no changes.
This one is worse. People drink water like never before. They prefer sachets to bottled water because of course the heat is too much. Our children have suffered a great deal due to the heat. The powder cannot even kill the rashes on their body.
The government too should be able to do something because population of 250 million, the government cannot afford to fold their arms. People are suffering health-wise, especially during this period.
Honestly, the water I'm taking now is even much now because initially we used to take at least maybe like 4 or 3 bottles. But now almost 7. I have to be factor with you. Since morning now, you know, I think I'm trekking at times because of the morning, the vehicle transportation, the surveillance. So now in the morning I took one, about 2 now again. So before I got to home, I almost 6. So because this is too much, if you don't take water, some can even not collapse.
How should Nigerians manage themselves in the face of the unfavorable weather condition?
It's not funny. If you find yourself in the office and your office have a toilet where you can take your bath, just get a little towel down to the office the next day, and intermittently, if your office does not have AC, just go and take your bath. Particularly if there is no generator to power your fan, take your bath as often as you can.
What I would advise that they should reduce the number of passengers, where they maybe on seat where normally seat that occupy about 4 passengers before, you should try as much as possible to reduce it to 2.
Take a lot of liquid as often as you can, and stay away from excessive heat so that you don't run crisis.
I think the school, generally, I think the teachers in the school now, they should ensure that most of the classrooms now in our schools, the classrooms are not overcrowded with students. Then they should also ensure that there's enough ventilations, especially where schools that cannot afford to mount air conditioner in their rooms. So they should try as much as possible to even allow the children to have a break, to come outside to receive fresh air.
Apart from the human health, experts say heat waves can significantly impact agriculture negatively as extreme heat stresses plants by reducing soil moisture uptake, hindering root and shoot growth, and decreasing water uptake for the plant. Oba Adeoye, Arise News, Lagos.
Oh, well, I have to say I was very grateful for the rainfall that came down. I think it was about 2 days ago. I woke up that morning, I was like, oh, thank you, because it's been really hot. Even just grateful for the very cozy, cold studio that we are in now, because we know that out there it's been very hot. But just like that doctor in Oba Adeoye's report spoke about, there's so many things that could come out of this. And I think what I'll just say, because I mean we do know what the experience is. Outside of that, I think it's very important to note that this is not the time for us to be having limited electrical supply. We need the government or the discos to be able to just come together and make sure that this thing that we have all the time where the national grid keeps collapsing cannot happen now. Heat waves are it leads to heat stroke, it leads to dehydration, it leads to even like diseases. Even there's a study that I was reading, I think 2 days ago, at how it even affects pregnant mothers because they won't be able to regulate their body temperature. There's so much that could come out of this. It might just seem like, it might not be a really deep problem, but if it goes on for too long, we're going to start to see people who are already protesting for other things now add this to it. So it's very important that also Nigerians find a way to keep cool. I know the clergy in that VT spoke about, if you have a bathroom in your office, go downstairs. If you don't have an AC, put a towel in water, kind of damping yourself down. That could be something that you have to do if there's no ACs, and just make sure that you're taking adequate fluid, you're seeking shade, you are not doing strenuous physical activity at the peak of these heat hours, and also wear light, breathable clothing just to make sure that you are not also exposing yourself to these high temperatures, and just continue to, follow this story and see what happens eventually. We had Leila Johnson-Salami on the show last week, and she, of course, spoke about the correlation between, global warming, the rising ocean temperatures, and now these heat waves. It's getting hotter in hot countries, and it's getting even, cooler in these cold countries. What's also being done on the back end of that? We went for COP28 this year, with the largest delegation. Is there a conversation that was had? Because definitely there were predictions about these heat waves. What exactly is being done about it? I'll pass the baton to you now.
Sheita, we thank God for the rains, and we thank God that we survived. Many people fell victims of the heat waves. I was a victim too. For more than a week, I suffered repeated dry throat and sore throat, and I had to go to, my doctor, to complain. They said, "Bro, you're not ill. This is what is happening. Generally, just make sure that you're not, dehydrated and things like that. But it took quite an effort, and of course, when the rains came, everybody heaved a sigh of relief, because just like you said, it happened to be a time that electricity supply was poor and bad and unbearable. So you can imagine what many Nigerians who probably lived in far more rural areas, far more poorer areas, will have, been through. I think the only other angle that I would like to add to the beautiful submission that you had is the absence of solid government intervention in terms of information. And we could see that right from what Obadio presented. Where's the voice of government and all that? Maybe I might have missed it, but I cannot recall either of the ministers of health, or even in Lagos where things ought to be proactive. Listening to a health commissioner, a special advisor, giving real-time advice, to people. There were a few federal agencies, meteorological societies, who churned things out. But I'm saying that it was almost to the point of national emergency. And you couldn't connect in any way to people who are meant to be in charge of health. How many people, for example, suffered? How many people did we lose, at that point in time? How many people were hospitalized? Those are issues that, people who are in government ought to be addressing. And I can't recall listening to anybody high up in government taking what happened in January and February as a national emergency. I think that was a shame, and I think that should be a lesson to those who are in authority to say that you can't just walk away and pretend that, people will deal with it. In any case, they can search information on the internet. I thought that was a poor response on the part of government, and it ought not to be so.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's interesting that you brought up COP28, where we did have one of the largest delegations. And our government seemed to be very into, the green energy, and even the police was there. I recall the IGP was there talking about climate initiatives and how it will benefit the police. But I think something that's very important to point out is that we need to be proactive about what's going on with global warming and climate change, because us in the global south will suffer more about these extreme shocks that, in temperature, like with this heat wave, with the desertification, with that insecurity, the shocks that are going to be felt by us are going to be worse than shocks that are felt by those in the West. And so we need to be proactive and not reactive. And beyond just health initiatives for people, we also need our Minister of Agriculture or our Minister, because we need to plant more trees.
Yeah.
Yes.
We need to plant more trees. Trees help with reducing air pollution. They provide shade. They cool down cities.
Yeah.
We also need to be more when we're building our buildings, we need to build them considering, okay, are we using dark roofing material? Are our roads absorbing and keeping heat in our urban areas? Are we using reflective, cost-effective and more future-forward planning in our building of our cities, in our building of our roads, in our landscaping? And so these things that we talk about, we cannot always just be reactive to what is, one crisis after the other, because the crises are going to keep coming. But what we need is a government that's helping us prepare for them, a government that's looking ahead, a government that said we have put these things in place so that when these heat waves do come, or when a lot of rain comes, it will not flood. Absolutely. So that when a lot of, if we have extremely dry weather, we've planned for this in terms of our harvest or our food. Like, we need a government that's forward planning.
Officials walking you through
the
difficult times and leading from the front.
Yes, and communicating. Because, I think it's a serious issue where, first of all, they seem not to even be communicating with us or themselves, right? You need a cohesive policy to address the issues that we're facing. And it seems, which, is not their fault to some degree, that there are a lot of fires they have to be putting out at every point in time. It seems that they're running helter-skelter here. But at the same time, they might need to look, inwards into their teams, inwards into all the committees that we have. We have a lot of ministers. We have over 40. I'm sure amongst themselves they can come together and start doing some forward planning as well, because it is a crisis. People sometimes think that the climate or global warming does not affect us too much here, or we're not very conscious about how it will affect our everyday lives. But I know everybody who felt the heat in the last week now fully understands that global warming is important. Yes.
All right, from one issue of concern for Nigerians to another one of a more extenuating nature, you may say. The Nigerian government and key cement manufacturers have pegged the cement price at between 7,000 and 8,000 naira, amidst concerns about the hike in the cost of the product in the country. This new price regime for cement is part of the outcome of a meeting with the cement manufacturers at the Federal Ministry of Works. Our rice correspondent, Godfrey Eshiomoge, has more.
It was a 3-hour meeting chaired by Minister of Works, David Umahi. Minister of Trade and Investment was also present along with the cement manufacturers, Dangote, Bua and Lafarge. The main agenda of the meeting is, among other things, find out what is responsible for the sudden hike in the price of cement and how to address the price issue, which the manufacturers blame on factors including high cost of gas, bad roads, high foreign exchange rate and smuggling.
The Honourable Minister for Trade and Investment had already engaged the NSA on the issue of smuggling of the cement across our borders that creates scarcity in some parts of the country. And we all agree that she is going to deepen that engagement with the NSA. And we will know in the next 30 days. For the cement manufacturers, which is Dangote PLC, the Bua PLC and Lafarge PLC, have agreed to have their cement price nationwide to between 7,000 to 8,000 naira per 50 kg bag of cement, depending on the locations.
There will be price control mechanism in place to ensure compliance, especially by retailers.
Government advised cement manufacturers to set up price monitoring mechanism to ensure compliance to the price that I've set today, and manufacturers have willingly accepted to do that and to sanction on their own any of our distributors or retailers found wanting.
The government says at least 6 cement manufacturing companies will join the market soon. And the Minister of Trade and Investment says government is committed to collaborating with players in the industry to make things work effectively.
There's no reason why we should be experiencing the kind of issues that we're having with cement prices, which was why we called this meeting. And with the intervention of this stakeholder engagement, we will try also to see how we can support the industry to reduce the cost of cement for every citizen to enjoy. And this communique speaks to that fact.
The cement manufacturers, on their part, pledge to collaborate with government to make cement more affordable.
We definitely will continue to innovate to ensure that we can have alternative ways, providing building materials that actually support affordable housing and the ambition of the government.
You may say the limestone is the local material, but to operate a mines you have to have machineries which are purchased by dollars. Spare parts to run those machineries by dollar. HO to fuel that is also dollar dependent. Explosives are also dollar dependent. So a whole lot of costs are related to that.
We are bringing in additional 6 million tons, and we think that will have a serious impact on the supply of cement in the country. Once you have this additional supply, I believe the price will remain within this range between 27,000.
With these outcomes, it is hoped that the impact will be immediate amidst outrage over the hike in the price of cement in Nigeria. Godfrey Shamoge, Arise News.
All right. Yet another major issue concerning Nigerians, the cost and the politics of pricing cement, and we're now at a juncture where the government is sitting down with manufacturers to determine what should be the pricing. Are we back to the era where government will say, please don't, pegging the price, don't go beyond 7,000 or 8,000. But what really, were the issues? That I didn't hear in details from all the negotiations that were going on. How did we jump from 4,500 to 6,500 and all of a sudden to 10,000 to 15,000, almost going to hit 20,000 for a bag of cement being produced? Reportedly, hopefully in Nigeria.
Hopefully.
We have had issues. You remember the cement hamada crisis scandal?
Yeah.
Those times. You remember the rebargaining of cement? While I commend that government at least, made some intervention, I'm weary of the direction when government will now have to say, hey, we can't go beyond this. Are we back to the era of, price control? Have we successfully and sincerely tackled the issues that led to cement, a frog leaping from 7,000, to 15 to 18,000? Those are the issues that Nigerians would like to know, so that everything, does not come to a temporary respite for those who are into construction, for those who are building, for the real estate sector, which is an important component of the Nigerian sector.
Definitely there. I mean, I was reading a report that was put out by Cardinal Stone that, of course, revealed that the cement prices, regardless of this intervention in 2024, will continue to remain high. And this report actually noted that this was a report put out by Cardinal Stone. It's called the Nigeria Cement Rebounding from a Tumultuous Year. And its nation's cement industry, they are blaming it on the poorly executed Naira redesign, which led to cash scarcity, currency devaluation back in June of 2023, and heavy rainfalls during the third quarter of 2023 as well. However, it projects that a rebound in the sector's performance in 2024 will be based on the increased infrastructure budget. I think it's about 1.2 trillion naira as of now. So the creation of this infrastructure support fund that we're seeing now by the presidency, the active implementation of the AFCTA, and increased production capacity are some of the things that might mitigate it. And it's interesting to note, and especially because it's being produced locally. So there's been that argument as to why exactly is the floating of the naira affecting something that's being produced here, and the response to that is that the producers were seeking to offset the operational costs and the volatility in the forex market and high inflation. So of course there has to be a balance, and I agree with you, because at what point when we're looking at price control, we were talking about how certain stores and supermarkets were being shut down because of how they've had to increase their prices, and the FCCP has had to step in. But in this kind of situation where it's like this is something that that is not necessarily being controlled by these forces, how do we put a stop to that? I'm impressed that the government has stepped in and is beginning to have that conversation. Well, how far can that go? Because 20,000 naira for a bag of cement at this time in Nigeria is definitely not what we need.
It is definitely not what we need. But I would also say, and I'm always here to tell the government that they can always go further. And now I think one thing when we're discussing it is that there's an elephant in the room, which is that we have a little bit of a cement cartel in Nigeria. There's 2-3 companies that determine the price of a commodity that the whole nation requires. That is a cement cartel we have in Nigeria. And when you have that is why you can have a meeting with a few individuals, and then the price of a commodity would be, changed very differently. But I think beyond that, everyone is impacted by the rising prices in operations. Every manufacturer, anyone producing something within Nigeria, your price cost of diesel has gone higher, the cost of your machinery has gone higher, and you also have to compensate with higher labor costs because the cost of food have gone higher, the cost of rent has gone higher, so you also have to pay your cost of transportation has gone higher, so you also have to pay your staff more. So that means everybody, every manufacturer, anyone producing anything in Nigeria has higher operational costs, and those costs will be passed on to the price of their goods, to the price of whatever they're manufacturing, price of whatever they're putting on the market. Another thing is that when it comes to cement pricing in Nigeria, we have middlemen. The price is not just set in the factory. The price, the cement is going to be transported from their factories, from the places of operation, and it's going to be resold by marketers. And we have middlemen who are, I would say, between themselves, probably they have their own cartel, who are determining these prices and who hike up the prices higher than they are sold to them by these companies like BUA or Dangote or Lafarge. They might determine a price now, and the government might come and they say, okay, we'll peg it at 9,000, but the middleman is going to buy it, and then he's going to put it in his trucks and fill them up, and whether fairly or unfairly, he might hike up those prices. And another thing is the federal government has decided that they are going to do, I believe it's cement, they're planning for introducing concrete roads, right? And in 2023, the Cement Producers Association of Nigeria warned that this concrete roads is going to lead to an increase in the price of cement, and then the price of cement also increases in certain seasons. So there's definitely many things affecting the price of cement. Obviously, it is untenable, the current price. It is untenable for the progress of our country for it to be that high. But what the government needs to do is that they also I'm sure, are aware that the price is not only determined by the manufacturers, that there are other market forces at play. And if they really want to target the price of cement, then maybe democratize, that sector of the economy. But if you're not going to do so,
Betos and a few other people.
yes, but
cement of wood.
Yes, but if you're not going to do that, right, then you have to have proper targeted intervention that is not just top level. Because there are many, many factors that affect the price of cement. And we're all aware of that. So, yeah. Well, now I think we're going to talk about the crisis in Edo State. Oh, no.
All right.
We're going to the U.S. The U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday in California had a private emotional meeting with the widow and daughter of Russia's most significant opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, who earlier this week died in prison. This comes after his administration announced fresh sanctions against Russia over the death of the Kremlin opposition leader. The visit at a hotel in San Francisco came as the White House backed Navalny's mother in her fight to retrieve her son's body, which Russian authorities have refused to release days after he died in an Arctic prison. Navalny's team says the 47-year-old President Vladimir Putin's most outspoken critic was murdered. In a related development, President Biden has called his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, a crazy SOB at a fundraising event, which the Kremlin decried as shameful. The 81-year-old leader has regularly had harsh words for Putin since Moscow's invasion of neighboring Ukraine 2 years ago, including calling him a butcher and a war criminal. And on Wednesday, he was no less direct. Biden has said the United States will announce a package of tough new sanctions Friday against Russia over the death in prison of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Biden's invective was a huge shame for the country itself, for the United States. Well, there's no surprise there that President Joe Biden is calling Vladimir Putin an SOB after Vladimir Putin went out and said he'd prefer Biden to be president. I expect more of these very strong words.
I mean, his reaction. I was reading this article of Reuters where the headline reads, Putin with ironic smile praises Biden for calling him a crazy SOB, and it just speaks to Putin's body language. You know, he really doesn't care. You know, he's doing his own thing, and just
so
kind
of. Is this Putin you are putting the blame on now?
No. I'm not. Putin rather really doesn't care. But if we bring really back into the meeting that Biden had with the Navalny family in California, pledging sanctions against Putin, saying that they're going to continue to fight. I mean, I wonder if this in itself has any, backing, or this is just again, we're having this body language from the President of the United States, of course, as the leader of the free world, trying to would I say in the statement express the admiration for Navalny's extraordinary courage and just continuing his legacy of fighting against corruption for a free and democratic Russia. What exactly is the United States going to do about it outside of these meetings and outside of calling him, a crazy SOB? Yeah,
I mean, Biden has announced 500 new sanctions against Putin. They're trying to target Russia's energy revenues. I think there's 100 different export items they're trying to stop from getting into Russia. I think now that we're getting closer every time it's election year in America. Yes. Every time it's election year in America, we always have to take these things into consideration. But also, there was a threatened lockdown over the House of Representatives in America, passing a bipartisan national security supplementary bill. Yeah. So, there are domestic issues at play here beyond just these issues of this Putin versus Biden or America versus Russia, especially in context of the Russia-Ukraine war. But also these new sanctions, again, it does seem that Putin seems unfazed, but I do believe that there is something to be said about the soft war that is being waged in America. I would say a culture war, that Putin seems to have gotten an upper hand on the American president and on the American public.
Apparently.
Because you have people like Tucker Carlson, you have American right-wing journalists who have now given platform to him and given some of his outward outbursts credibility. And this is a man that's very dangerous. And so some of his rhetoric being normalized within the American electoral space is actually something that is probably extremely frightening for the American president, beyond just Navalny and beyond just the Ukraine war. It's also, I would say, a soft cultural battle that is going on, underneath the whole thing there. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, this for me is a question of good PR and bad PR in one single story. The good PR, meeting with the wife and the daughter, of the gentleman that was killed, the very warm, close hug, that is quite familiar with, Mr. Biden and everything. And of course, the bad part of it, let's face it, let's not sugarcoat it. That's a disgraceful utterance by a sitting president, and I think that this will not betray the fact that the Joe Biden is getting overwhelmed, possibly jittery, as November, gets nearer. And this was right. There's a soft cultural war, going on between America, and Russia. And it looks to me like the president does not seem to be winning, that PR, public image, kind of war. And every time it comes out as pro, Ukraine, with all the background of the, alleged deals and things, as far as Ukraine is concerned, you can see that this is a man who is desperate to retain his seat. But you can't, there are some types of language that you are not allowed to use, even as an American, president. That's not, you reduce your status, you reduce, your office, when you ought to be parading yourself as the global Robocop, but then you're using language that ordinarily people will expect that it is Putin that will use that, but he has been calm.
Or Trump.
Shots fired.
Well, you can trust that Trump will come after him, with this type of language. So what are you going to say? That, okay, that's the type of language that is associated with Trump and not with Biden. He dropped the ball, and I hope that this won't cost him something dire when November comes.